It's always good to be at SynCon every year, whether it was physically or online during COVID. And it's always a pleasure to be here among the SynCon community with the Div0 people. Amazing group. Thank you for organizing this every year. And thank you for keeping things so alive in this community in Singapore. For me, my name is Genie, Director. I don't want to assume that people know me. So, Director of Government Affairs at Kaspersky. Had just come back from a place which is 7 hours behind. So please pardon me a little bit if I look a bit sleepy today, because it's technically 2 a.m. for me and it's bedtime. So very good morning to everyone. I'm from Kaspersky, and I really thank you because some of you actually attended the conference yesterday on day one when I wasn't here yet. And then you actually texted me over LinkedIn to say that, oh, we're looking forward to your keynote tomorrow morning. So I'm very happy to be meeting some of you today. For those of you whom I haven't said hi to, I would love to do that and shake your hands and get connected after this keynote. But today, really, my topic is transparency as the foundation for cyber resilience. I'm going to be touching on some topics over the next 5 hours. I'm joking. Some of you are. Over the next, I think, 40 minutes or so. Emil has taken some of my time, so maybe 35 minutes. I'll try to go through all of this. I do have 34 slides, but I'll try to not make it as lively as possible. Because really, this is an important topic, and I think we are quite a trendsetter in this aspect in the industry, and I would have some best practices I hope to share, and which I hope will be useful to you in your work as well as you go about contributing to a more robust cybersecurity, cyberspace in Singapore and beyond. For some of you I know, actually, that have regional jobs or global portfolios as well. So for those of you who do not know, Kaspersky is quite an old, well, brand name. It's been 27 years now. And in fact, in June, by next month, we'll be celebrating our 27th year anniversary. We are a cybersecurity company that had its humble beginnings back in 1997, producing and selling antivirus software. Right, but of course, beyond that, we've gone into full suite of enterprise solutions, amazing threat intelligence, doing a lot of strategic projects, helping countries around the world build a more robust cybersecurity framework, servicing the CIIs, and so on and so forth. But not so much about the company, but what I really want to talk about more is, in my introduction of the company, usually is about what our core values are. And core values are important because, like, even for us as individuals, our core values define us, correct? If I'm a dishonest person, you wouldn't want to be my friend. You won't want to even be associated with me because then that would be a risk to your reputation, right? So as a company, Kaspersky's, one of our core values actually is transparency. And I think for me, for those of you who know my career history, I'm a qualified lawyer, called to the Singapore Bar, was practicing for a while and then joined the Singapore government, spent 8 years in government service. And then in the last 4 years, did a career switch into tech, cybersecurity, joined Kaspersky. And this is one of the initiatives which I go about talking about a lot. And I want to be able to share some relevant information with you today, which hopefully could be useful for you. So I will start by sharing some prominent cases of recent ICT supply chain attacks that Kaspersky has come across. This will be followed by some actionable lessons for Singapore's enterprises, institutions, and organizations. And of course, finally, and most importantly, I want to talk about how this is underpinned by trust and transparency, which you may have heard about in the recent years, and also how Kaspersky as a company has sought to achieve and earn these. Yeah. So let us now start by defining an ICT supply chain. I don't want to assume that everyone knows it, so I usually have a slide to just quickly get the definitions out of the way. In simple terms, every organization's IT system contains multiple points of connections, yeah? And of course, these include suppliers, distributors, customers, managed service providers, and of course, contractors. And if any of these points of connections is compromised, you would, of course, I believe, agree with me that they can easily become a target for attack. And in my next slide, you would see this domino effect that's going around in a spiral, and I love this. And I use this graphics to illustrate the point that the more points of connections there are, the more attack vectors that could be. Right? If any point of connection within an ICT supply chain is compromised, you would, of course, again, agree with me that a domino effect can be triggered, causing uncontainable damage. Let me now share some prominent cases of, in recent years, of ICT supply chain attacks that Kaspersky has come across in our research to illustrate what I just said. And of course, some of these I would say have made the news, made the headlines, and were rather prominent for good reasons, and you would see why. I've got 3 examples. The first one is actually from India. It is the All India Institute of Medical Science. I'll just call it AIIMS for short, because it's quite a mouthful. In New Delhi, right, they were actually hit by malware attacks twice in the span of just 7 months in November 2022, and then subsequently in June 2023. While the 2023 attack, the second one, was successfully neutralized, the earlier one, which was in 2022, actually had led to disruption of many services, especially online-based processes. Patients were actually asked to return home without having the opportunity to consult doctors, and basic daily operations like making of appointments, admissions, and billing systems were completely affected. And of course, AIIMS officials have cited a weak firewall, outdated systems, and the lack of cloud-based servers as reasons for the cyber attack. Another example actually rings home a little bit for me, because I'm a user. Of course, this is high profile because it is our largest, correct me if I'm wrong, still the largest, right? Largest telco in Singapore. They actually suffered a high-profile attack a few years ago, which led to a severe data breach. Some 129,000 customers' data was leaked, as well as some sensitive information, such as financial details of former staff. When I speak about this over meetings with some overseas, I mean, I do travel quite a lot, and I speak with governments around the world about some of, you know, talk about cybersecurity, basically, right, and trends and all that. And sometimes I would, when I'm speaking with a telco, this topic usually sometimes comes up. And to them, it's like, oh, it's only 129,000. It's nothing, right? For very populous countries, they're like, oh, only 129,000. For us, it's like in the millions. And I then will say that, but you must understand that we are speaking about a small island state, right? So 129,000 is pretty significant. So this actually happened, and this was made possible because Singapore's file sharing system, which was attacked, was actually developed some, I think, 20 years before, right? And so this illustrates my earlier point, which I made, that if any point of connection within an ICT supply chain is compromised, then a domino effect could easily be triggered. On to the third, and actually my final case study that I'd like to share. It's a case which our researchers have been monitoring very closely. And it's my favorite case for illustration, actually. So what happened was that while investigating the artifacts of a supply chain attack on the government's certification authority's website within Asia, we discovered a Trojanized package that dates back to June 2020. When unraveling that threat, we identified a number of post-compromised tools in the form of plugins that were deployed using PhantomNet malware, which were in turn delivered using the said Trojanized packages. So our analysis of these plugins revealed similarities with the previously analyzed coughing down malware. So what the attackers did were to collect the victim information, which includes computer name, host name, username, OS version, so on and so forth, and to install, remove, and update malicious plugins. These additional and more complex plugins are probably only deployed on a few selected machines. And by also installing the legitimate program, the attackers make sure that this compromise won't be easily noticed by end users. So all in all, we can conclude that the government agencies were the real target of this attack. This is especially relevant for critical infrastructure sectors such as the financial sector, fintech, insurance industries, all of which are critical information infrastructure sectors, right? And a certification authority of any country is, in fact, also a critical infrastructure of the country. So to contextualize all of this, a digital certificate is what we use for all verifications of personal data, right? For those of you who are residing in Singapore and are citizens, you would understand your SingPass, right? It's basically that, right? It's your digital certificate that contains all of your personal information, the most personal information, including your banking details and stuff like that. It is the single most important information that can belong to any one individual. If attackers can use such trusted avenues, such as a certification body, to attack an ICT supply chain, it goes to show just how pervasive ICT supply chain attacks have become. And this highlights for us, my learning point is that it is important to be guarding against these. So the case studies I've shared so far basically cover a range of industries, which also happen to be the ones with the most widespread impact. So it's healthcare, telco, government, but of course these are just examples. There are so many more, like BFSI, and in the Middle East, especially vulnerable will be the oil and gas energy sector, right? Of course, healthcare saw a massive, and pharmaceuticals saw a massive rise in terms of importance ever since the pandemic, COVID-19, and then COVID-20, and then COVID-21, and then COVID that keeps on staying and doesn't seem to want to go away, right? So healthcare, definitely. It goes to show that ICT supply chain attacks know no sector, right? Anything will do. Basically, cyber attackers are sophisticated and opportunistic. Basically, wherever there's money, wherever there's data, wherever that there is something valuable for them to extract, they will go for it. They don't flip Forbes magazine to check out Fortune 500, whatever, right? It is the collective responsibility, therefore, of all cybersecurity professionals in the room today, many of you, from many different sectors, government, private, public, to guard against them. And what does this mean for enterprises and institutions? At Kaspersky, we suggest some actionable steps. I'm quite action-oriented, so I don't like to speak concepts and not have takeaways. So if you see on this slide, I have made some recommendations on how to strengthen the ICT supply chain. I think it is essential for concrete steps to continue to equal efforts from governments, concerned regulators, and private companies alike. Yeah. And the way forward should be paved with trust and transparency to ensure fruitful cooperation and collaboration that will bring about a safer cyberspace. Call me an idealist, but people always say that we will always be playing catch-up, right? Of course, we meaning people who are trying to defend the cyberspace and making it safer for tomorrow, for our future, for our collective future, as against this kind of cyber attacks that just keeps on keeping on. So, but I'm an idealist. I still think that we should press on and work together a lot more. Of course, easier said than done. Some of the key ingredients for these to happen will basically be, first of all, focus on developing core principles, right? Technical standards to ensure a consistent level of cybersecurity across all companies involved. And this is something that we speak about a lot on international platforms to get that mind share. At Internet Governance Forum, for instance, at Paris Call, so on and so forth. And of course, secondly, steps to improve procedures and regulations on ICT supply chain infrastructure. And these are conversations that we have with governments, regulators, CERT teams, people who work with us and have that public and private partnership going. And of course, the need for actionable national cybersecurity strategies. In fact, fresh from the oven, I think last night I got a news feed of an interview that I gave in the Philippines to the media, speaking about the Philippines National Cybersecurity Plan, 5-year plan. And of course, they're not the only ones. Obviously, a lot of countries around the world are either coming up with one themselves, their master plan for cybersecurity. It's a baby step, a necessary one. But hopefully also the devil's in the details, and implementation of the plans is important. And so let's see what some of these countries which are taking this initial step are doing to amplify the efforts and impact that it could possibly be making to creating a more robust critical information infrastructure for their countries. And of course, either that or some other countries are constantly renewing their systems and their legislative and policy frameworks to ensure that we continually renew ourselves to the emerging trends in cyberspace. Of course, Singapore leads the way with the Cybersecurity Act and multiple amendments already. And of course, our neighbors in Malaysia recently also passed their cybersecurity bill. So I've spent some time talking about collaborations and partnerships in the previous slides. But this is also, of course, not always easy, because the question now, the million-dollar question is, who should we then collaborate with, right? As private sector, I ask myself that question, which is the correct public institution to be collaborating with? And previously, working from the government, and I take that government viewpoint, I'm like, okay, and which private partner should I be collaborating with? So both ways, yeah, we have to make the assessment. And it's not always an easy assessment. And in fact, like I had mentioned from my first slide, my cover slide actually, even before my first slide, I've said that trust and transparency are the building blocks of cyber resilience. And you should be collaborating rightfully with those that you trust and those that you see are transparent, right? Not just anyone. This brings me to Kaspersky's Global Transparency Initiative, or GTI for short, for those of you who have not heard about this. It basically is a reaffirmation of our company's commitment to earning and maintaining the trust of our customers, who are, of course, very important to us. And it includes a number of actionable and concrete measures that we take consistently to ensure that we maintain that independence as a cybersecurity expert company. And within this GTI framework, we've got 6 pillars that you see on the slide. I will flesh them out in the subsequent slides. But with this GTI framework in place, Kaspersky also calls on third parties to join collaborative efforts to enhance the security and integrity of modern software products, hopefully to set the tone and inspire other vendors to also take similar actions and steps to creating a more trustworthy and transparent cyberspace and landscape. Our GTI was launched in 2017, so it's been 7 years and more, and counting. It has evolved throughout this 7 years as well to keep pace with the changing geopolitical climate and in many respects stay ahead of the curve to set the tone and also to preempt questions that are facing customers, regulators, as well as partners. Now, the first pillar on the next slide is the relocation of cyber threat-related data processing and storage. As part of our effort to deliver our promise back in 2017 when we launched our GTI, Global Transparency Initiative, our customers' threat-related data have been relocated to Switzerland, where data storage and processing for customers in Europe, US, Canada, Latin America, Middle East, and countries in Asia-Pacific region now take place. Of course, essentially, customer threat-related data from Kaspersky's security network that are shared voluntarily with the company. Of course, this would include IOCs and suspicious files are now stored and processed in data centers in Zurich, Switzerland, which we all know is reputable for its neutrality and impartiality and has the highest standards globally, among one of the strictest regimes in the world that's compliant with European standards. And of course, provides world-class facilities for us to host our data centers in compliance with industry standards and international standards to ensure the highest levels of security. This shows how much, of course, we value our customers outside of our primary markets in Europe. Yeah, so which is why, such as APAC, to help our customers in this region feel safe about using us. I must say that it has been a very expensive endeavor for the company. We've spent a lot of money on this exercise. But I think trust cannot be measured by monetary value, and trust cannot be earned by just lip service. I don't believe in lip service. I don't pay lip service, and therefore, when picking a company to join. In the private sector, I was very intentional about picking a company that doesn't pay lip service as well. So I think in my view, Kaspersky has over-delivered in most respects of the promise of transparency, and is currently holding what some of our customers and regulators actually have paid this compliment and said that, oh, you guys hold the gold standard of what transparency in this industry stands for. And with that, I hope, we can continue the good work and continue to set the tone. Moving on to the second pillar, very quickly, which is the pride of our GTI, basically our transparency centers. To be honest, over the last 7 years, we started off with Zurich as our first flagship transparency center, together with, of course, our data centers being hosted there, followed by the one in Madrid in Spain. And then slowly we were expanding our transparency. So it started in that part of the Western world, and then it slowly moved on to other parts of the world. And today we have got 12, with the most recent one launched just last month in Istanbul, Turkey, right? And we also, apart from launching our transparency center, we also have a transparency lab with Boğaziçi University in Istanbul to do some joint research. These are basically, what is in the Transparency Center? They are basically trust-building facilities where partners and customers can learn more about our solutions and practices and get first-hand experience in verifying the trustworthiness and integrity of our products by looking closely into our source codes. Of course, a strictly worded non-disclosure agreement must be in order for that to happen. And visitors can actually inspect and look at our threat detection rules, as well as our antivirus database updates, right? So we're very proud to be, truly I am, we're truly very proud to be the first, and still after 7 years, the only cybersecurity company to have a dedicated transparency initiative that allows our source codes to be reviewed like that. And, we invite state agencies, regulators responsible for national cybersecurity and the protection of information systems in any country, enterprise partners, key customers, especially from strategic sectors, to come forward to inspect our source codes at any of our transparency centers around the world. And in fact, if they don't wish to travel, a remote access can also be granted and can be discussed, right? So up to today, we have hosted more than 60 of such source code reviews at our transparency centers, and I'm happy to report that not a single red flag has been well flagged out. But of course, I just in case you're wondering, because sometimes people wonder, and really to get rid of the elephant in the room, just want to be clear that under no circumstances whatsoever will Kaspersky provide intelligence or law enforcement agencies that have a mandate or even the capability for cyber offensive operations to have any access to our transparency center. So we have actually turned down some requests from such agencies, which we have doubts about, yeah? Just to stay clear and above board. Now, I've talked about this briefly, but let me just set out in detail what is available for review. Yeah, it's basically our software development documentation, the source code of our flagship products, our builds and antivirus database update, and of course, finally, the rebuilding of our source code to make sure that it corresponds to publicly available modules. Very quickly, on the next slide, just want to touch on SBOM, Software Bill of Materials. In some countries, and some people still tell me it's a relatively new concept, and truly it is. Essentially, what it means is that when you're buying a software product, you're basically buying a black box, right? And in a black box, you really don't know what are the third-party components and what are the ingredients. You're buying a dish and you don't quite know what has gone into the cooking of it, right? And if any part of this third-party product is compromised, essentially the entire product is compromised, which then leads to a supply chain attack, which is exactly what I was talking about in the front part of my presentation today. The initiative to introduce SBOM was what's done by the Department of Homeland Security in the US, and of course, Kaspersky is proud to be a pioneer in cybersecurity in this respect. So at Kaspersky Transparency Centers, our customers and partners can also launch a compilation process to receive new binaries and compare them to the publicly available ones, and therefore, in the process, be assured that the source code they review corresponds exactly to the public binaries, right? So this is what happens. These are what happen at our transparency centers. Pretty interesting. Moving on to the third pillar, is actually on third-party assessments. It actually helps you to see how a company or a vendor can be trusted. So if you are, working in, I don't know, an ICT, a cybersecurity unit or a department within your organizations that does such procurement, and you want to do security assessments of ICT products that you're purchasing or potentially using, you should actually ask for the third-party assessments minimally to ensure that what you're buying is legit and it's been assessed by an independent expert third party that is in the position to certify the trustworthiness of the brand. Right, so among the certifications and security assessments that we've completed, I'll just highlight two. We've received the ISO 27001 cert perpetually. It's very basic for us in terms of certifying our data security practices as well. And both Kaspersky's systems for processing files and statistics actually have been audited by an independent certification body as well. So as a result of independent reviews of our internal processes and engineering practices to verify the security and integrity of our solutions and processes, Kaspersky has successfully passed the SOC2 independent assessment by a Big Four auditor, and we constantly renew this certification on a year-to-year basis. Of course, the audit covers the development and release of Kaspersky AV basis to prove again that our security, the people are by using our products, they're secure against any interferences. And of course, we are also proud to be the most tested and most awarded cybersecurity vendor in the world, right? We've participated in more than 100 tests and reviews in 2023. I will have the 2024 figures by beginning of next year. But so far in 2023, we have obtained first placing in 93 of these tests. So that's 93%, which is good. And this number is higher than any of our very prominent competitors who do not need to be named, because I think this chart is self-explanatory. The fourth pillar is our bug bounty and program and vulnerability management program, which I think may interest some enthusiasts or practitioners in this room, because it's open for you to participate for good rewards, monetary rewards, right? Kaspersky has published our set of ethical principles for responsible vulnerability disclosure also, and this document can be viewed on our website. And we know that every software program will contain bugs at some point in time, and we encourage people to, through our bug bounty program, to find and report any bugs that they detect or see in our software for a reward. And we have one of the industry's best vulnerability management program. Our bug bounty program rewards up to $100,000 for the discovery and coordinated disclosure of severe vulnerabilities. Right, severe vulnerabilities will be something that causes the software to not work the way it's intended, of course. Right, and since the launch of our bug bounty program in March 2018. It's been 6 years now. This is the total bounty that we've paid so far. 139 bugs reported, 59 of which were rewarded, and close to $82,000 of, in terms of total bounties that were paid. So if anyone in this, just want to also say that Kaspersky employees are not allowed to participate. So too bad. Yeah, too bad. We'll just wait for my bonus. Yeah, for speaking a lot at these conferences and working very hard. But for the rest of you who are not working in Kaspersky, feel free, find a bug and get paid. Right? Help us. Help us to help help the community as well. Help us help the people who are using Kaspersky. Right? Now, moving on to the fifth pillar. This may also be interesting for some of you, because it's actually our training program, which we have called the Cyber Capacity Building Program, CCBP. The origins of this is a little bit unique because I had previously mentioned in my third pillar about when I talked about transparency centers that it basically are trust building facilities that allow people to come forward to review our source codes, right? And a lot of regulators, so this is the genesis of this. A lot of regulators, and this happened when I first joined the company, so I know the backstory. A lot of regulators that I was speaking to actually said that, Genie, it's all well and good that you guys open up your secret recipe for us to review, but sorry to say, but we don't know where to look. It's like opening up a book to us in a foreign language that we do not understand. So we're like, okay, so what's the point, right? Then it becomes a white elephant. So it's all nice and grand. We've got this massive GTI campaign. We've got 12 transparent, at that time, only about 6 transparency centers when I first joined the company. Oops, don't touch my mic. And then I've got a bunch of people who are like, I want to review because I'm a regulator and I need to know that you guys, operating in our country, you're trustworthy and all that. But we don't know where to look. So we're like, okay, fine. So we developed this program in 2020 to basically equip people, right? It's called the Cyber Capacity Building Program, which contains different modules, and it can be provided online or offline. We've done both. On product security, threat modeling, secure code review. So it teaches people how to review a source code, and of course, vulnerability management and disclosure, and even code fuzzing and all that, yeah? And so I think this is good because it is also vendor agnostic. our CCBP is not, our training programs are not to train people to assess Kaspersky. Of course, you can use that to assess us. That's the whole genesis of this. But you can also then be equipped with these skills and go on to assess any ICT product or software out there. Yeah? So it's vendor agnostic. It's incredibly useful. And in my next slide, I have put some names of prominent agencies within Asia, which have actually successfully completed our CCBP training and have given us, thankfully, grateful for that, rave reviews for the quality and effectiveness of our training in helping them assess us and others. Yeah. Now, on the final pillar, how are we on time? Yeah, I'm on time. Now, on the final pillar of GTI on law enforcement and government request reports, because when we speak about transparency, for us, it often also means transparent reporting on how we address requests for data by governments, by law enforcement agencies. So ever since 2021, we started publishing these statistics, and we seek to answer questions such as, how many of these requests do we receive from which countries? How many of these are requests for personal data, which means a lot for you and for me? And how many of these requests are acceded to? How many of these are rejected? We publish these statistics transparently. But for the record, we actually deny, funnily, many of these requests flatly, particularly those that involve personal customer data which people are concerned about. Because as a starting point, people need to understand that Kaspersky is not a social media platform. We're not even e-commerce. We do not even receive or retain or store or process any of the kind of very, very personal data that such other companies collect to begin with. So if we do not have such data, there's nothing that we can really disclose for those who ask. So I don't have what you need from me, and therefore the response to your request is, I'm sorry, I cannot help you, right? We're therefore not able to address these requests any way, and for such requests that we cannot respond to, we will simply deny. So we have a set of core principles in responding to law enforcement and government requests. A lot of words on this slide, but in short, there isn't a single functionality within Kaspersky that's not, that is not properly documented or that is run by third parties. There isn't a single functionality that is purposely made to harm our customers, of course. And if we ever find any irregularity, we will address these at first instance, right? So I've spoken so much about what we don't reveal to people who ask us for customer data. But when we talk about public-private partnerships and international, regional cooperation, we talk so much about information exchange, right? So is there anything at all that we share? Because we also have very high-profile collaborations, which have been in the public domain with agencies, international organizations such as Interpol, Europol, and several national law enforcement agencies in investigating or providing countermeasures that disrupt cybercriminal activity. So how is it that you do it without exchanging information, right? What we do share is, without actually compromising on data privacy, is that we advise on methodologies on how to investigate cybercrimes, because not forgetting, Kaspersky is not just a vendor company. We are pretty much a research company, which is why many of you would have actually subscribed to our secure list, which actually provides very valuable research reports and output on cyber threat trends, projections, forecasts. And we always also make very accurate predictions of what's to come as well, which sectors to look out for and all that. So we are a research company, and we therefore advice on methodologies on how to investigate cybercrimes, or to alert on existing research which can help prevent similar attacks. Examples, of course, include the MD5 hashes of malware, indicators of compromise, information about the modus operandi of cyber attacks, as well as output of malware reverse engineering and other results of our cyber forensic analysis. So these we share, yeah, without actually having to reveal any part of customer data, identifiable data. So to give you a sense of the positive impact, though, through Interpol, we actually informed a Latin American company of a potential heist of the size of the Bangladeshi heist many years ago, because we studied that case and we were able to help them prevent severe financial loss. So obviously you didn't hear about this and in the news because we successfully averted it and it didn't happen. But for the fact that I could speak with such moral authority on the stage, on record, in public, means that we really did help with that prevention. Now, I've said a lot. This is our report card in one sheet. It's been more than 7 years since the launch of our Global Transparency Initiative. It's been a long journey. It started even before I joined Kaspersky, obviously. So I just want to do a stock take of how far we've come, yeah? We have results to show. Our technology speaks for itself. We've literally put our money where the mouth is. $8.4 million of investment into our Global Transparency Initiative, and it's still clocking figures. I've set more than 60 Transparency Center reviews, data relocations, an expanding network of global transparency centers, regular third-party independent assessments, and of course, please don't forget our bug bounty program, yeah, and of course our training program. So these are things that we're extremely proud of, and I really just want to conclude that there are many ICT suppliers who may be able to make promises about transparency. But at Kaspersky, I think we've consistently delivered on our promises. Our GTI is an important vision for us, and we really hope that, you know, this value of transparency can be promulgated to the rest of the industry and have more of other vendor companies also practice this high level of trust and transparency. Because really, the world is becoming so divided. Even our Prime Minister, former Prime Minister spoke about the bifurcation of the internet space and all that. And it's really because of the growing distrust within, you know, between people, between organizations, among countries. But in the technical world, where our values are undergirded by really that intent and that motivation to create a safer cyberspace for all, regardless of, this is becoming very, regardless of race, language, or religion, or language, or, you know. So regardless of whether it's a Chinese-speaking APT threat actor, Russian-speaking, English-speaking, Spanish-speaking, Korean-speaking, any language-speaking, our collective goal really is to prevent cyber attacks and make tomorrow safer for one and all, regardless of wherever we come from. And I think if we are able to remember that we all have that collective mission, then hopefully, with trust and transparency, best practices being promulgated more in the industry, with private sector taking that first step to set a good example, hopefully, it inspires more to do likewise. It's been 7 years that we've been doing this. We're still alone. We hope to have some company soon, yeah? And with that, it's been a great pleasure speaking to all of you, and I really wish you a very fruitful conference. And my name is Genie from Kaspersky, and thank you very much for paying so much attention to me in the last 45 minutes. Thank you.